In 2017, obesity became the #1 cause of preventable premature death in the US, leaving behind the long-term winner, addiction to nicotine. Though 2 out of 3 adults are overweight, obesity affects today nearly 40% of adults in America, and obesity rate in children is increasing every year without any ability to stop it. When I examined the plan offered widely to help obese to lose weight, I could not find much of a difference with the plan that was offered in the 1960s or the 70s. And back then, 40-50 years ago, obesity was not on the headline news. And today, in the 21st century, medical professionals cannot give us clear definition of what is obesity, what causes it, and why it became unstoppable pandemic. In this video, I will try to clear the mystery and the confusion. For references, I will use information from leading medical professionals like the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the World Health Organization, and from the Obesity Action Coalition. So first, let's find out what is obesity. Well, obesity is a medical condition where body mass index exceeded 30 points. But if someone's BMI is between 25 to 29.9, he will be considered as overweight. However, according to the Obesity Coalition Action and medical authorities, high BMI is the result of a disease, just like high blood pressure is the result of a heart disease. In their opinion, obesity is caused by many factors, and it's treatable and can be managed. They think if you are obese, it is not your fault, and you cannot manage it by yourself. The experts from the Obesity Coalition think there is more than just food to create obesity, and we all know there isn't a miracle treatment for it. So can we call obesity a disease of the brain, or it is a compulsive behavior? Because in order for science to recognize a brain disease, they must first prove interaction between the addictive drug to the reward system in the brain, thus influencing the addict to compulsively using the drug over and over. Therefore, if obesity is a disease of the brain, the drug that causes it must be recognized before any other factor. Just like nicotine was identified as the drug that causes addiction to tobacco. And if obesity was chronic disease, it should be treated and managed like many others. However, chronic diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol are treated and managed successfully with medication and improving lifestyle, right? But all this doesn't apply to obesity. As a fact, there are no medications to treat obesity successfully with long-term or lifelong effect. And if obesity is not someone's fault, so whose fault is it? If addiction to nicotine is caused by tobacco, so there is a product to blame and even warn the public from it, there are corporations to condemn and to sue them for damages, right? But in obesity, it will be politically correct to say that there are many factors contributing to obesity, and therefore we cannot blame anyone specifically. In case of obesity, it is better to keep the fog over the issue and throw phrases without explanation. Look, to say that obesity is a complicated disease, and as such, there is a good reason why it is so difficult for science to find medication and program to treat it successfully. Or maybe the problem is that obesity has more than one cause. Therefore, it is difficult to treat it. But you see, the National Institute on Drug Abuse had already proved that a drug must be involved in order to claim obesity as a brain disease. In case of obesity, on the one hand, science declares that obesity is a brain disease without announcing which drug causing it. But on the other hand, science telling us that obesity is not just about food, and therefore we cannot blame the food corporations for obesity. However, we know that for every action must be a reaction. For example, for the action of smoking tobacco, the inevitable reaction are heart and lung diseases. So, what action is needed to cause obesity? To make obesity a complicated disease, science is giving us 7 reasons to become obese. So, let's take a look at those reasons and see why each one of them cannot cause obesity. Reason number 1, consuming too many calories. Well, we all like to indulge on sweet and tasty food on birthdays, parties, and holidays. Consuming too many calories that does not make someone obese. Chronically consuming food rich in calories will cause someone to gain weight. And being an overweight person doesn't mean you will become obese. Here I am in 2016, 43 pounds overweight, but I didn't turn to be obese. And the fact is that over 60% of Americans are overweight because they consume too many calories, but about half of them are obese. Besides that, the same food is available to everyone, but 40% of Americans are obese. And science is telling us that food is not the only cause of obesity, because if it was, then some foods would be labeled as drugs, right? Reason number 2, we are living a sedentary lifestyle compared to past generations. It is true that in the 21st century, most of us don't have laboring jobs. We spend hours in front of the TV and the computer, and we commute from place to place with cars. All those have their share in the crisis, but there are overweight people even among construction workers and other laboring jobs. Sedentary lifestyle starts to spread in America after Second World War, as automobile industries start to manufacture more cars and families move from the city to the suburbs. So without dietary changes, people will gain weight simply by eating the same number of calories without using them on a daily job and for commuting from place to place. So yes, sedentary lifestyle without proper dietary modifications eventually results in becoming overweight, and that's what happened in America from the 1950s to the 80s. However, by all means, sedentary lifestyle can cause someone to become overweight, but it doesn't cause obesity. There must be another factor. So the next suggestion for the cause of obesity is number 3, not sleeping enough. The study suggested that sleep deprivation increases the risk to develop obesity. The problem with this theory is that obesity, unlike other chronic diseases, can develop only in overweight people, whereas other chronic diseases can develop in adults of all sizes, genders, and ethnic groups. Therefore, someone first must be overweight in order to become obese. In my clinic, I met with people who suffered from insomnia. Most of them were facing challenges in their life, like divorce, losing their job, or death of a loved one. That by itself can cause sleep deprivation. But challenges in life can also cause people to overeat, drink more alcohol, smoke more cigarettes, and engage in other drug abuse. A study was published in 2009 shows that sleep disorder associated with drug abuse. But in case of obesity, science still did not declare some foods as addictive drugs that can also cause sleep deprivation. Reason number 4 could finally recognize the drug that causes obesity, because a study shows that consumption of liquid fructose, or as it's commonly known, high fructose corn syrup, can cause metabolic syndrome that leads to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and high blood pressure, and eventually obesity. The conclusions of all the studies suggested to avoid high fructose corn syrup. Not just the studies offer a logical solution to what causes obesity, but also the statistics clearly shows how obesity rate started to go up in the 1980s after the introduction of high fructose corn syrup. However, despite all the studies, the FDA categorized high fructose corn syrup as generally recognized as safe for consumption without any limit. This irresponsible act proved us again that the FDA protecting corporations and not the public. By the way, high-density fructose syrup was not known to humans as food before its invention back in the 1970s. As I explained it on another video, 2,500 years ago, sucrose, known as sugar, was considered a very expensive drug. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the price of sugar dramatically decreased due to a new growing and processing techniques. High consumption of it started to go up. High consumption of it caused many people to become overweight. But then a new drug was discovered that was addictive as sugar, but was much cheaper. And the drug dealers started to produce more and more food items with it. You see, nobody could stop those corporations because the FDA categorized sugar and high fructose corn syrup as safe to use without limits. Today, there are food engineers working for drug cartels, creating addictive food for babies, children, and adults. And they have only one thing in mind: to create a legal product that consumers like the taste of it, to make them addicted to it, so they will buy it over and over. And all this criminal act for greed is totally legal in the entire world. The reason number 5 for obesity are medications causing weight gain. But if we examine those medications, we'll find that they are mainly antipsychotics, antidepressants, and mood stabilizers. Medications widely used to treat many people in all sizes, shapes, genders, and ethnic groups, including people who want to lose weight. So those medications can cause anyone to gain weight, and they can cause an overweight person to gain even more weight and become obese. But those medications do not cause obesity. To my clinic came overweight people who were depressed because of the fact they could not lose weight. That by itself is a good reason to use antidepressant and mood stabilizers drugs. Reason number 6 suggested that obesity is caused by self-perpetuating, which simply means that the more fat someone carries, the less likely he will be able to lose it. But isn't overweight can also be self-perpetuating? How many overweight people are trying to lose it on the yo-yo diet? So in other words, reason number 6 is telling us if you are overweight, you have a good chance to become obese, or at least you have a problem to lose weight and keep it off. But what is the reason for it? One study titled Chronic Stress, Drug Use, and Vulnerability to Addiction also suggested that early life chronic stress has a connection to the dopamine system and using drugs. which can perfectly match to childhood obesity and obesity in general, where the child or the young adult first become overweight, which in return causes physical and emotional stress. This leads to use even more of the drug until eventually they become obese. In other words, stress can cause chronic overdosing on a legal drug labeled as food, and this behavior is directly contributing to obesity. Medical experts conclude the saga with reason number 7 for obesity: genetics. But we know that babies are not born obese. It's known that if the parents are overweight or obese, their children will learn from them wrong eating habits, and they can become overweight and even obese, just like their parents. However, childhood obesity affects children of parents of all sizes and shapes. So by all means, obesity is not inherent like the color of hair, skin, and eyes. But the meaning of genetic can be also a phenomenon of an organism. And today, science even searching different areas of genetics. One of them is behavioral genetics, which includes mental illness. Now, look at this child and tell me if what you see is not a behavioral phenomenon of an organism caused by nothing else than a drug. In conclusion, I can suggest that obesity is a slavery to common legal, highly addictive drug that hijacked the reward system in the brain, thus altering the behavior of the addict and influencing him to act automatically against his own free will. Therefore, obesity is the result of acquired behavioral addiction to edible drugs that intentionally categorized as food for human consumption. And what causes obesity? There are a few factors contributing to the rising rate of this behavioral disorder. Number 1, higher production and lower cost to manufacture the drug, which happened from the 1980s with the introduction of high fructose corn syrup. Number 2, the health authorities like the FDA and the World Health Organization protecting the legal drug cartel by A, not warning the public about the potential diseases associated with prolonged usage of the drug, B, by not condemning and suing the drug corporation. As a fact, most states in America don't even have sales tax on those drugs like they have on other addictive drugs such as tobacco and alcohol. C, our government and legislators who prefer to protect the farmers growing the drugs, but not the public who's using it, getting sick and eventually prematurely dying from it. And in the next episode, I will introduce to you the common sense solution to freedom from slavery to common addictions. So stay tuned.